Hello and welcome to the Newshour Agenda. I'm Madhavdas G. Donald Trump is all set to commence his second innings as the US president. In minutes from now, Trump will take the oath of office as the 47th president of the United States of America. He, along with Melania Trump, arrived at the White House and met the Bidens ahead of the swearing-in ceremony. After taking the oath, the new president is scheduled to deliver an inaugural address, laying out his plans for the next 4 years. The world is watching the developments closely, especially as Trump has vowed a raft of executive orders concerning immigration, energy as soon as he assumes office. Over the next 1 hour, we will decode what the Trump 2.0 administration would mean for India and the world. First up, let's take a look at Trump's statements which are of interest to India. So this is what we're talking about, Modi-Trump dosti, in terms of him saying that Modi is a friend of mine. Let's go on to the next statement. He's the nicest human being is how he's described the Prime Minister. He's the nicest and a total killer is also what he has said. But he's also gone on to call India a tariff king. India is very big with tariffs, will impose reciprocal tariffs is what he has said in the past. He has also said that India a very big abuser of trade ties. But during the course of the campaign, he had also shared his concerns on Bangladesh Hindus, has condemned the violence against Hindus in Bangladesh. He said that this wouldn't have happened under my watch. That's clearly, of course, the statement that Donald Trump has put out. All right. Let's quickly now get you some breaking news coming in at this point of time. And in fact, this is the latest that we have. This is, of course, news concerning India and particularly, of course, as far as immigration is concerned. Malvika, we understand that there is a very, very important aspect of immigration that now Donald Trump has, is expected to sign off on. And one of them is, of course, the fact that those who are born in the United States would not automatically get birthrights if their parents are immigrants. Take us through what this really means.
Well, after this spending already gets completed, Donald Trump intends to go back to the White House, and as he's been saying, he's going to get to work. On day one, around 200 executive orders are going to be signed. 10 of those will be related to immigration, as the sources. And one, as you mentioned, relates to the birthrights of people, citizenship rights of people by birth. Now, remember that in the U.S., even if your parents are not U.S. citizens and you are born in the U.S., you automatically get U.S. citizenship. And the Trump administration and the campaign, during the campaign trail, Donald Trump has emphasized that people who are illegally entering the country, their children are automatically getting birthrights. And this is not in the interest of the United States. Now, while this might not be relevant as far as illegal immigrants are concerned, and that might be a security threat for the country, it also has implications for Indians, especially those who come on H-1B visas, and their children are born in the U.S. Automatically, their children would get the U.S. citizenship. But now, after the signing of this order, such children will not automatically become U.S. citizens. The final point, of course, is not available yet for us to discuss.
Thanks so much for the quick update there, Malvika. In fact, reporting from the Capitol Hill, of course, a big day indeed, Malvika. Thanks so much for bringing us that quick update. But there are also, in fact, we're also joined by Jessica Stone at the moment of the Voice of America. Jessica, let me also ask you, should New Delhi be wary of Trump's unpredictability and transactional approach? What does Trump's return to the White House in that sense then mean for India? Jessica.
So the India-U.S. relationship has been growing really since President Trump's last time in office, and the Biden administration certainly building on it as a counterweight to China, but also a huge market for American goods and for American partnership. So I think we will continue to see that under a President Trump, that there will be closer relationships for potentially some of the manufacturing that it needs to come away from China. If it doesn't go to Vietnam, could go to India, more of the market, especially the high-tech goods. That doesn't mean that there is necessarily stability in anything that President Trump does with respect to the relationship. You should always be aware that things can change, particularly in the area of tariffs, because it's not at all clear that India will escape tariff that President Trump has promised to levy on many of the trading partners of the United States.
Right. And Jessica, also the Trump-Modi friendship is something that has been talked about a lot in the previous regime. The big question is what's driving this personal relationship?
Yeah, I think these two leaders have a lot in common. You know, they're people who have campaigned to the working class, the middle class of their countries. They're people who really focus on the external relationship with the country and the ability to bring in manufacturing and foreign direct investment as a driver of their economies. And yeah, they do have a personal friendship. You know, they did campaign together the first time for President Trump's time in office as he tried to appeal to Indian Americans. And this is really a significant win for him within this population. This is a significant part of the U.S. electorate, the Indian American voter, and something that President Trump is very aware of. And he is also keenly aware that Prime Minister Modi can be helpful on a personal and geopolitical level in places like the Pacific Islands, the rest of Asia, the Oceania, the broader oceanic vision. You know, we think of organizations and relationships like the Quad. So these are important relationships, and they are built to some extent, for President Trump at least, on personal.
All right, thank you so much for the quick update there, Jessica. Let's also, in fact, tell you what really India is looking at in terms of the Trump 2.0 regime, because this is what many are saying. All right, I believe that Donald Trump has arrived at the Capitol Rotunda, where, in fact, the ceremony has well and truly begun. Let's cut across live to that. In fact, while we wait for President Trump to arrive over there at the Capitol Rotunda, let's also, in fact, quickly tell you what really we are looking at here in India as far as the Trump 2.0 regime is concerned, because many are also fearing a return to stricter regulations on foreign workers. In fact, we just broke that news for you a short while ago, and that's been the hallmark of Trump's previous administration. His stance on immigration, could it be restrictive for Indians? Of course, he's previously cracked down on illegal immigration. Could there be an aggressive policy against the H-1B visa in the first tenure as well, which continues in the second tenure? That's what is being spoken about. In fact, there are tighter rules that could create hurdles for Indian professionals is what many fear. In 2023-24, Indians accounted for 72% of the total H-1B approvals as well, as far as India is concerned. So this is a very, very real fear. Another important aspect when it comes to India-US ties is the strategic and defense cooperation. Will we see a further deepening of those ties is something that we'll have to wait and watch, because in the last term, Trump had pledged to deepen defense ties, and India remained the largest global arms importer as well. In 2019 and 2023, that term saw India's arms imports 9.8% of the global arms trade. In 2019 to 2023, 13% of India's arms imports were from the United States, and all eyes are on a deal for fighter jet engines production in India as well. That's being spoken about as far as the US-India defense cooperation is concerned. All right, let's cut across live now to the Capitol Hill.
Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the Vice President-elect, the Executive Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Mr. Michael Wagner, Senate Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, Jason Bell, and House Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms, Mr. Sean Keating. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, the Honorable J.D. Vance.
And as we stand by for President Trump's inauguration, the ceremony, of course, has begun. But let's go across to Meera Shankar, who's a former Indian ambassador to the United States, as well as Salvatore Babones, American sociologist, joining us. So let me start with you first. Meera Shankar, will this entire issue of immigrants, of H-1B professionals, is this likely to see some kind of action? Already we are looking at action that is potentially being taken under the Trump regime, and how will that impact on Indians in the United States specifically?
This could impact Indians as well. In the 1.5 million people ready for deportation, who have completed all their legal processes, there are believed to be about 18,000 Indian nationals, mostly from Punjab or Gujarat. This is not such a large number, but of the 11 million or so illegal migrants assessed to be living in the United States, about 275,000 are estimated to be from India, and this would be the third highest number after Mexico and El Salvador. Deportations may not happen immediately of the second group, because they would have to be identified, rounded up, and then they would have recourse to legal processes and may also face legal challenge from civil society groups who are gearing up to challenge.
Shankar, just interrupting you there. Donald Trump arriving there at the Capitol Rotunda. You see him, in fact, greeting all of those who are present at that particular moment. And, this is a huge moment for the whole world, for the United States, certainly, because the kind of, changed approach that Trump is likely to have as far as the previous Biden regime is concerned. Salvatore Babones, let me ask you, in November following Trump's election, the Indian External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, had stated, I know today a lot of countries are nervous about the United States. Let's be honest about it. We are not one of them. In your view, are there any specific aspects of Trump's policies or rhetoric that may still leave room for concern or uncertainty, particularly for countries like India, in your view, Mr. Babones?
Dr. Jaishankar is exactly right. The countries that are concerned are mainly in Western Europe. I don't think that's one for India to worry about. The big issues for India, let's face it, are two. One is Bangladesh, the other is Russia. Now, when it comes to Bangladesh, the Trump administration is likely to be somewhat more favorable to India's point of view than the Biden administration was. The Biden administration was clearly unwilling to take India's needs or positions into account whatsoever. It showed no interest in India's thoughts on Bangladesh, and in fact, if anything, viewed India as a unwelcome partner when it came to dealing with Bangladesh.
All right, let's also quickly introduce all our other guests. Joining us as well is Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Senior Fellow at the IPCS. With us also is Kriti Upadhyay, who's the founder of Indus Tech Council. With us is Elizabeth Braw, Senior Fellow of the Atlantic Council. Pastor Shannon Wright is a Republican leader and CEO of urbanengage.org. We have Dov S. Zakim, who's a Senior Advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies and Vice Chairman of the Board for the Foreign Policy Research Institute and former U.S. Under Secretary of Defense. Let me start with you first. Pastor Shannon Wright, do you think that these are valid concerns on immigration? We've seen a lot of rhetoric in the last several months in the run-up to the election, so on and so forth. But already we know that one of the first decisions that he's going to be taking is as far as the birthright of immigrants are concerned. And that's something that, hugely impacts people from different countries, including India, who are present there in the United States. How much of an issue do you think, and how far will Donald Trump go in actually implementing what he has promised thus far?
I'm sorry, who are we starting with?
Yes, that's a question for you, Pastor Shannon Wright, on the issue of immigration.
So, I believe that he is really going to start with some of the things that he spoke of. I do believe that today, after the swearing in, we will see an abundance of executive orders. And I do believe that they will start with immigration, but they will start with illegal immigration and the criminal element that already have detainers and have already been certified through the court process to be removed.
Okay, let me bring in Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, how much of it is rhetoric and how much is it something that's actually going to be implemented this time around? It's been a tricky issue in the past for India and the United States, but now do you see restrictions of illegal immigrants as one aspect, but what about the legal immigrants, those who go under the H-1B program, for instance?
So remember, with Trump, he's your typical New York sarcastic. You have to learn how to differentiate between New York sarcastic and his more serious comments. He said he was going to make peace in the Middle East the last time round. He ended up getting more people to sign peace deals with Israel in that one term than all the previous American presidents put together. So we need to understand where he's coming from. He is very, very serious about illegal immigration. It's a leftover agenda from his first term. It is absolutely important to his core voter base, not just because of the fact that it's illegal immigration. Like the previous speaker said, one kind of illegality is fungible. One kind of illegality leads to all other kinds of illegality. It is the same roots and people who are involved in people smuggling, who invariably, we've seen this in the India-Bangladesh border, on the India-Burma border, who are involved in drug smuggling, who are involved in other kinds of crime, lots of crime, in fact. So he will have to deal with that. It is one of the core promises.
Right.
H-1B, we need to have a very nuanced position on this. The H-1B program largely works. Has there been abuse in the past? Yes, there has. Now, he has come out swinging. If you saw his Truth Social post on this, he has come out swinging in favor of H-1B visas, but he will be fixing some of the loopholes in there, in the way companies hire and in some ways how companies bend the laws on them.
Okay, that's a very important point indeed. And let me bring in Dov Zakim, Senior Advisor for the Center of Strategic and International Studies. And you've, of course, been a former U.S. Under Secretary of Defense. Dov Zakim, how far do you see Trump going? Because many are saying he's very serious, that he's already said in his very first day in office, he's going to bring in a set of laws when it comes to the issues relating to immigration. But how far do you think Donald Trump is going to go?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. He'll go pretty far. I agree with those who feel that this is one of his highest priorities, and he has to make good on it. And one of the things about Trump, if you remember, a lot of what he promised in the campaign in 2016, he actually did carry out. He may not have carried them out in full, but he did carry them out. And that's something to bear in mind. He's going to focus, obviously, on illegal immigration. There's a big debate amongst his own followers regarding those visas, because you've got the tech giants who do want to bring in people like the experts from India who obviously help their businesses. And then you have the sort of hard right MAGA types who are against all kinds of immigration and don't care. That's going to have to be resolved. Trump, I think, is probably leaning toward making exceptions. And he does have a good relationship with Prime Minister Modi. That's important. And so given the being surrounded by people like Zuckerberg, like the folks from Apple, like Elon Musk, those are the people who want Indians to come in.
Right.
And so he'll be listening to them.
Absolutely. That's an interesting point that you make over there. The tech titans, of course, are going to be those who he listens to. But let me take this question across to Elizabeth Braw as well. Elizabeth, one of the factors that is interesting about Indians president of the United States, of course, they have a huge share in, important posts high up there in the next administration. That's, of course, coming in now. It is about 4.8 million strong Indian Americans who are there. Only 34% of them are US born, while 66% of the Indian Americans are immigrants. So anything concerning immigration directly would affect the Indian American community over there. How is this all going to play out?
India is, I have to say, despite the debates around visas, India is in an extremely good position because Trump is trying to reduce U.S. dependence on China, and you can do that by working with various countries, but no country is as important as China. This is where there are opportunities for American businesses to move their manufacturing, the ones that are trying to and will be incentivized to reduce their presence in China. That's why India matters a great deal, more than any other country at the moment, because America already has extremely strong links with European allies, and you can always improve those, and we'll see how it goes. But India is the country that can be the most beneficial to the U.S. at the moment, both when it comes to the crumbling globalization and the rising geopolitical tensions. This is the country that the U.S. really needs to win over on its side. Not just the U.S. government, but U.S. companies as well will seek to strengthen ties with India and indeed set up more operations there.
Right. Kriti Upadhyay, of course, is founder of Indus Tech Council and perhaps best poised to tell us. Kriti, how is this issue being perceived? Because, there's already a lot of rhetoric surrounding Indians over there that we've been seeing on social media. How far is this going to influence, the way that the government acts over the next 4 years?
Thank you for having me here. I think as far as illegal immigration is concerned, of course, there's going to be a crackdown. And I think that is something that has been due for a long time now, and there is overall consensus on the same as well. As far as legal immigration, immigration for folks with high-skilled labor, I don't think there's much to worry over there. In fact, I'm in that whole process myself. I'm here on an O1 visa, and I'm not worried. In fact, I'm actually excited because I think some of those timelines that are really, really long right now for EB1, EB2 may actually get shortened because Trump has promised that the processing times that USCIS does will be shortened going forward. I think there's some contentious issues, say the issue of dreamers. That might become a contention because the Dems and Republicans have historically always been divided along those lines. But I think as far as illegal immigration is concerned, tightening the H-1B, let's not forget, at least 30 to 40% of H-1Bs that are being used right now are not necessarily being used in the way that they're supposed to. There are these placement agencies who run these programs and have like a bunch of low-skilled labor or cheap labor really, using this H-1B provision, which is something that doesn't really help anybody or the U.S. economy. So there will be...
I'm just going to interrupt you there for a moment, Kriti, because I believe the formal part of the oath-taking ceremony is about to begin. Now, let's cut across live to that.
Know that I am God, supreme among the nations, supreme on the earth. Let us pray. Remembering General George Washington on his knees at Valley Forge, recalling Abraham Lincoln at his second inaugural, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Remembering General George Patton's instructions to his soldiers as they began the Battle of the Bulge 8 decades ago. Pray. Pray when fighting. Pray alone. Pray with others. Pray by night. Pray by day. Observing the birthday of the Reverend Martin Luther King, who warned, "Without God, our efforts turn to ashes." We, blessed citizens of this one nation under God, humbled by our claim that in God we trust, gather indeed this Inauguration Day to pray for our President Donald J. Trump, his family, his advisors, his cabinet, his aspirations, his vice president, for the Lord's blessings upon Joseph Biden, for our men and women in uniform, for each other whose hopes are stoked this new year, this Inauguration Day. We cannot err in relying upon that prayer from the Bible, upon which our President will soon place his hand in oath, as we make our own the supplications of King Solomon for wisdom as he began his governance. God of our fathers, in your wisdom you set man to govern your creatures, to govern in holiness and justice, to render justice with integrity. Give our leader wisdom, for he is your servant, aware of his own weakness and brevity of life. If wisdom which comes not from you be not with him, he shall be held in no esteem. Send wisdom from heavens, that she may be with him, that he may know your designs. Please, God, bless America. Please, mend her every flaw. You are the God in whom we trust, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen.
Mr. President, the last 4 years, there are times I'm sure you thought it was pretty dark. But look what God has done. We praise him and give him glory. Let us pray.
All right, let's now, in fact, go right back to our guests who are joining us. Meera Shankar continues to be with us. Meera Shankar, you know, as the Prime Minister Modi and President Trump shared a very good personal equation last time round in the Trump first regime. A big question now, whether there will be any impact at all of the domestic issues. Will they cast their shadow, or do you expect that bonhomie that we saw the first time round between the two leaders to only continue and take the relations that much closer?
I think that, personal relationship will remain strong. And there is also a degree of ideological affinity between Trump's Republican Party and the government in India, because both are conservative governments. Trump is also expected to give lower priority to issues such as human rights and democratic freedoms, which have been an irritant for the Indian side. So this is something we would welcome. We would also welcome his efforts to end conflicts. In Ukraine, Trump is serious about beginning negotiations to bring the conflict to an end. In Gaza, a ceasefire and deal for sending back of hostages has been worked out and is being implemented in phases. So already we can see that some progress has been made. This is something which India has been advocating in Ukraine from the beginning.
Right. And in fact, Salvatore Bobons, do you see this leadership, impacting India, specifically any particular areas where Trump's approach, you think, might be starkly different from the Biden administration on India, either its bilateral or even multilateral forums like Quad?
U.S. policy towards India is driven entirely by American national interests. There might be some areas in which Donald Trump is likely to appear friendlier to India than the Biden administration, largely because the Biden administration has a lot of pressure from human rights groups to be stricter in its relations with India. But in reality, most of the relationship is driven by defense procurement and American fears of China. And on both counts, counts. The Biden administration's approach to India will, I think, be left intact by the Trump administration. There may be a more friendly tone to the relationship, but I think the substance of the relationship is likely to remain the same.
All right, so that's really, of course, how things are, and in fact, the very important relationship between Prime Minister Modi as well as President Trump. Let me get in a quick question from Abhijit Iyer Mitra before we cut across to that. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, you see that tone, the bonhomie only continuing?
I do see it continuing. Look, let's be clear, there are going to be problems like the tariff issue. Tariffs are always going to be a problem with the Trump presidency. But, you know, we had a twofold approach to the Trump presidency the last time. This is not the first time he's raised tariffs, right? The last time we just went on talking...
The vice president's being sworn in. Sorry for interrupting you there, Abhijit. Let's cut across to that.
The Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith.
That I will bear true faith.
And allegiance to the same.
And allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office.
The duties of the office.
On which I am about to enter.
On which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Vice President.
Chief Justice Roberts to administer the presidential oath of office.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Live pictures coming in from the Capitol Rotunda where Donald Trump has been sworn in as a president, and of course very, very significant there, a 21 gun salute, customary as it is. In fact, that was just concluded a short while ago. Big moment, Dov Zakheim. Of course, Donald Trump, as he steps into office here in India, many are going to be looking at whether the bonhomie that we saw between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump will continue. They do share a close personal equation, but how far will that impact on the ties between the two countries? Of course, a lot of areas of cooperation like defense, for instance, but there are, of course, as Abhijit Iyer Mitra put it, some irritants in the mix as well.
Well, frankly, the first thing you have to have is good personal relationships. That's very, very important to Mr. Trump. And because of that, the fact that he does have a good relationship with Mr. Modi is an important starting point. And as you've heard, clearly defense is very important for the two countries, partly because of China, maybe largely because of China, but it doesn't end there. There is a strong Indian-American community that is very influential, particularly in places like Silicon Valley, which means a lot to Donald Trump. And so there's that element that should not be overlooked. Industry has been moving out of China to Southeast Asia, but also to India. That is something that's important to Donald Trump. He wants to onshore a lot, but he also wants to prevent China from interrupting our supply chains. And India is part of that solution. So I would say, and as you heard earlier as well, many of the things that have been irritants between the Biden team and India no longer are going to be irritants. India is not going to be hassled about human rights. That's not high on the Trump agenda. So when you add all of these things up, I think you're going to see that the trend that began way back, I would say even with Clinton, and certainly with the president I worked for, George W. Bush, of moving ever closer to India, I think that trend will continue.
All right. Kriti, that's a fair assumption, isn't it? That India-US ties in terms of the two countries, of course, going to continue. We are partners in a number of areas. But what really makes it unique this time round is the close personal equations that the two top leaders share. And that has an imprint, and a way of making things work when it comes to governance, where, decision-making, policy-making, all of that can, unfortunately, get stuck in red tape. But when the two leaders have an equation, that really changes things, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think as far as US... Sorry.
Yeah, Kriti, go ahead. The question was for you.
Yeah, I think as far as US-India is concerned, there is going to be continuity because irrespective of who's in power, there is bipartisan support for the relationship with India, be it Dems or Republicans. Everybody knows that India, especially in that specific geography, is the sort of, balancing power, is the one only sane power in that very crazy neighborhood. And Americans, as well as the Western world, does want a strong India. On defense, definitely the relationship will benefit from the personal bonhomie that the two leaders enjoy. Let's not forget that some of the critical things within the US-India defense did take place when Trump was in power, be it granting the STA-1 status to India, India becoming the major defense partner, sort of something that is only kept for India. India is the only country to enjoy that status. We wrapped up all of the foundational agreements during the Trump era, started some really, really interesting and influential, bipartisan dialogues. So I think that's going to continue. And another thing that India will definitely benefit from is that, just how the Republicans are not necessarily going to pester India too much on the humanitarian side. Similarly, with India's own balancing and relationship with Russia, there won't be as many questions as there usually are, and as much pressure as there usually is with the Democrats. So definitely looking forward to continuing this upward trajectory that our relationship has had in the defense space, coming from, $0 in bilateral trade just 10 years back to now more than $22 billion pipeline. Indo-Pacific is going to stay central. As you can see, all the four Indo-Pacific countries there, all the three Indo-Pacific countries, the Quad countries, their foreign ministers are present, and I think they're going to have a quick huddle with the incoming Secretary of State Marco Rubio just after the inauguration. So I think things are looking up.
Absolutely. Let's cut across. In fact, I believe the ceremony is still underway. Let's cut across live and just dip into the audio to listen to what's happening there.